Hello everyone, it's Blair Space here, and today is going to be the third Kaiju Universe tier list video. So yeah, let's get this show on the road, and this time I'm going to try and make sure it's not too compressed or short. So first off, we have Manila, self-explanatory. He has low health, very low speed. Like, he has 2,500 health, very low speed, has very low swim speed, like 70, and even half the time he can't swim at all. He has mediocre melee DPS, and he has no beam. His hitboxes are also not good. And even though he can go to level 200, the extra 100 levels are pretty much useless just based off his design, so I don't really see that as value. Whatever. Next up is Kamada-kun. Lowest health out of any kaiju in the game. Well, yeah, but you have really good melee DPS, and that's about it. That being said, it's enough to burst. It's more than Manila, because Manila he's mediocre at one thing and bad at everything else, but Shin Form 2 has really good melee DPS, and he can swim fast, so you know, you have that. You're slow on land though, so odds are you're probably going to get beamed down. Next up, this one's a bit shocking, but Anguirus. Now, I'll explain why. Two things. First off, they nerfed his health. Like, he lost 525 health. And second thing is, he lost some speed. They nerfed his sprint speed from 40 to 35. So, but they increased his damage. But in my opinion, those two nerfs I mentioned beforehand outweigh his damage buff. Plus, his hitboxes are still pretty iffy, in my opinion. So that's why he's this low. Oh wait, hold on. One thing I need to mention though, although Kamada-kun is like the second worst, Kamada-kun solos. I just felt the need to make that joke, okay? Kamada-kun solos, okay? Okay, now that we got that joke out of the way, let's move on. Next is Zombie Gigan. Nothing changed about him. He's still pretty bad. Infection is a very mediocre tool in PvP, and even if you're trying to support friends, because even if they have below 3,000 health and they get the health buff, you're slowing them down. So, you know, most cases it's not helpful at all. Next is Shin Form 3. Nothing really changed about him. Some kaijus just got buffed and are better than him now. He's an upgrade from Anguirus and Shin Form 2, but there is a starter from a remodel who got buffed, and you probably automatically know who it is because we already covered these two. Right? Yeah. Mother Longlegs, they didn't change her at all. She's still where she is last time. She is good melee DPS, best land speed in the entire game. But she's really, really frail. She can also range with spitting slashes, but like I said, she's just very soft, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't take that many hits at all to take her down. So, yeah. Next is Godzilla Junior. Nothing changed about him. The reason he's still low is because, one, he's super slow on land. Two, he has low base health. And let me tell you something. He might have good melee DPS and a mediocre beam spam, but low health and low speed are a bad combination, because that means you're easy to range. Two, if you start getting low, you can't escape. And three, you can get ranged because you can't catch stuff with melee. And because you're slow, if you decide to beam someone, odds are they can close the distance faster than you and start meleeing you. Like, just bear in mind, just because you killed a bunch of, you know, low-level players in a lobby with your max-level Junior, when you're skilled and there's a bunch of brainlets in the lobby, that doesn't mean Junior's strong. That's just a skill difference. Okay? Okay. Glad we could cover that. Next is Wendigo Crawler and Skull Crawler. Nothing changed about them. That's about it. Like, they have insane melee DPS, decent speed, kind of lowish health. They both have super jump, but they can get ranged by, like, you know, attacks with obviously who have long range. Beams can give them trouble, and flyers can give them a hard time too. Next is a flyer that I overranked in the last video, which is Mecca. Her hitboxes are awful, and her health is low. She has low health, very large charge cost for her melees, bad hitboxes, which means despite having low health, she has to trade hits when, you know, when trying to do damage. And when you have low health, trading hits is not something you want to do. So yeah, that's kind of why. Next is Godzilla. He got a small health buff of roughly 200 from his remodel. Melee DPS got a small buff, but most importantly, his beam got uber buffed. Like, his beam does so much more damage now, which is why he's so much higher than the other two starters. Like, I would say the other two starters are fine as they are since they're free. Remember, these are free kaiju. They don't need to be way, you know, like way up in here. They're free kaiju. So I don't know why this guy was buffed. Whatever. And Gezora is Gezora. He's a god. Like, for example, if this was based off fighting in the water, Gezora would be S+. But if it would be on land only, he'd be down here. But he's, you know, he's a god in the water, but a peasant on land, so he's king of C tier. And next is the kaiju who gets screwed over by the balance team the most, Showa Godzilla. Now, since the last one, he has gotten, if I can remember, 1, 2... Now, to compare to before, 3 nerfs. First of all, Dropkick does 20 less damage now, which, that's whatever. Dorsal Plate Charge does 100 less damage now, 700 at max. And apparently, according to the top Showa main, his maximum beam damage was lowered from 2100 to 1700, which is significant enough for me to bring him down from very low B tier to this in-between tier, because I don't think he's C tier, but I don't think he's B tier, so I give him his own custom tier, which basically summarizes Showa Godzilla in a nutshell. I do everything, but also suck at everything. Okay? Okay. Mothra Larva, basically what happened is they swapped her speed values. Her land speed is now 50, and her swim speed is now 80. She still struggles really hard to get out of land. She still struggles against flyers. Her web beam is decent. Her melee spam is pretty good. It's comparable to Shin Form 2's. She has very low health, but overall she's a decent kaiju. Where are you? You're hiding from me. Female Muto. Nothing changed with her overall. She's really strong melee DPS, good health, but she has no beam, and she gets harassed by flyers relentlessly, which is his 2 major weaknesses. She has decent range though, but overall she struggles against flyers. Kamivis, I don't think anything changed since the last one. He has mediocre DPS, kind of lowish health, but he can swim insanely quick, and he has a self-healing ability that can heal like half of his health in a pinch, which is really good, which is why he's here. So yeah, next up we have Kamadov-kun, who actually got a buff since last time, not there, which basically Shin Form 2 had like nearly 400 extra health, or no, he did have 400 extra health compared to Kamadov-kun, but Kamadov-kun got like a health buff, so now he has the same HP as Shin Form 2. So yeah, he's now slightly better. I have these moments where I just can't find a kaiju despite it being right in front of me. Male Muto, nothing was changed. He has decent, if you know how to land your hits and know how to use the double hit effectively, you can do pretty solid damage, pretty good at bullying ground kaiju, but against other flyers, he doesn't do too hot, and well, I can't say he's the best flyer when it comes to, you know, he's just not the best, but he's not bad either. Titanic Mogira, good melee DPS, decent health, decent speed, bad hitboxes, but she also has a blinding move, which is pretty good. So that's nothing really changed between last time, so she's staying in here. Next is Kumanga. Basically, with web spam and melee spam and your high speed, you can basically win a fight against any other ground kaiju, but you do extremely poorly against flyers, at least competent flyers. So, it's kind of like, it's a situation similar to Gezora where he's amazing at one thing but bad at another, except for him it's less situational, so it bumps him up significantly. Next is Heisei Mothra. Very weak melee power, but decent melee hitboxes, really good flight speed, really good beam that does good burst damage, but she's extremely frail, and like I said, her actual melee power is very low. Like, that's her drawbacks. Like, she, you know, she can do ranging, a little bit of ranging, and she has good beams, but her actual melee combat prowess is left to be desired. Next is the Chad himself, who got a remodel. He is about, I'd say, just barely in higher B tier from the remodel. He used to be like bottom of S tier. But honestly, this is a good spot for him. Recently, they buffed his, I think, claw hitbox, or just hitboxes, period, so it's not like the old ones where it could range you from, you know, everywhere, but, like, it's better at hitting small kaiju. But overall, they lowered his melee DPS by lowering the maximum damage for each melee by 50. They also, his beam damage, all its burst damage, takes a long time to charge up and has a long cooldown. So you're very vulnerable to just about any kaiju that's faster than you and has a decent beam, or just about any flyer with a beam, period. Which is a pretty big drawback, but overall he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Next is Titanic Rodan, the worst of the Rodans. You have the worst melee power, you're the easiest to hit because of the way you're designed, like, although you honestly, you have the worst hitboxes too, or at least you're, I don't know, yeah, second worst, I'm pretty sure, if not the worst. You have the worst hitboxes. I mean, you're tied with speed when it comes to all Rodans, but, like, all the other Rodans have more sleek design. Meanwhile, you're chunk. You're fat. Like, look at this. He's fat. So, I can't say it's exactly hard to hit Titanic Rodan. What keeps him from being, like, bottom of B tier or possibly even C tier is the fact that he has a beam, which is a pretty decent advantage. It's not the best beam, but it's not the worst beam either by any stretch of the imagination. Next is Manda, which might be surprising. His melee combat abilities are kind of mediocre. However, he's extremely fast in the water, and his boiling water beam is pretty, you know, decent. But what's really important is because the way your model's designed, you can stick your head through terrain, and you can basically beam people from behind hills, through beaches. You can literally just beam people while having a shield, which basically means free damage, which is, although extremely cheesy, it does bump him up here to almost top of. However, top of B tier belongs to 2017 Kong. You have 3,300 health, you have a base speed of 32, you have a super jump, you have pretty strong melee power, despite having mediocre cooldowns because you have 3 melee to cycle through. So overall, your melee DPS is good, but most importantly, Primate Lunge gives you a speed boost, a lunge. Combine that lunge with your super jump, the amount of speed or mobility and dodging potential you have as Kong is amazing, and to top off, it makes you great at punishing flyers for trying to range you in melee. Excuse me. Basically, your downsides are you don't have the most health. You can technically get outranged by some kaiju, depending on their hitboxes and all that. Primarily, tail whips are your biggest flaw, or just Sela existing, and beams, or just flying kaiju with beams, period. But overall, you're a very good kaiju. Like, you're literally the best kaiju at the Kong Skull Island DLC, which I think is good. Kamikaris, that's not bottom of A tier. Now, upon release, he was like mid C tier, but they gave him flight, which bumped him up to like low B tier. But then they reworked him where his walk speed is 60 now. A walk speed is 60, and then they buffed his flight speed to 80. Although his hitboxes are mediocre on land, when you're flying, your melee hitboxes are actually really, really good. Like, you can actually range people while dishing out insane DPS. Now, your downsides are you don't have a beam, And although 80 flight speed isn't terrible, it's still not the fastest. And finally, your health isn't exactly that high. You have 2,400 health. That's not a lot, period. So just be careful as this thing, because you'd be amazed at how quick you could die when you're not careful. Next is Jet Jaguar. Drag him up here. He wasn't changed, but I'll just go over it. He is the second fastest kaiju in the game, tied with Kumanga. The fastest ones, tied with Kumanga and Mothra Larva. The fastest ones being Kamikaris. Well, no, he's not even the ground kaiju. The fastest being Mother Longlegs, sorry. But the point is, he's extremely quick. He has a super beam, does a lot of damage. It's like a burst damage type beam. Has really short charge up. Cooldown isn't terrible either. You also have pretty good range. Dropkick allows for extra mobility. Your downsides are low health and the fact that although you don't have the most melee DPS. I can't say you have bad melee DPS, but it's not the most. Next is Batra. Nothing really changed. Overall, I would say it's a slightly superior Mothra, mostly because it does so much better in melee combat. You have much better hitboxes, a little bit extra HP, meaning you can tank more. Well, not that much more, but you have slightly better survivability. Your melees also do much more damage. The downsides are you are little bit slower, about 15 flight speed slower, but you're still really fast for a flyer. You're above the average flight speed. And your beam, although you have a beam, I'm gonna be real with you, Chief, your beam is hot garbage. Is like one of the, I'm pretty sure it might be the worst beam in the entire game. Don't quote me on that, but it's either the worst beam in the game or one of the worst beams. And again, although you have more HP than Hasty Mothra, you still have 2,700 HP. It's not that much. But you're not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. Next one up, recently nerfed. Heisei Godzilla. Basically, they took his melee cooldown. It used to be 2 seconds, and they lowered it to 2.8, or increased it to 2.8 seconds. And they also increased his melee charge from 10 charge per hit to 15, which does add up. Basically, I did the math, and the melee nerf lowers his melee DPS by roughly 29%, which is pretty significant. He's not terrible by any means, though. Still good melee damage. Still good range. Amazing beam spam. Your biggest weakness, however, is flyers. Flyers will mess you up. Period. Next is Titan 2019. You have good health. You also have really good melee power. You actually have really good water mobility because you go by for some reason, you go by the old swimming system where you can just turn on a dime while swimming, which is a pretty good advantage, which means you actually can use water to your advantage if you want to do water combat. You can even, you can do really good, basically. Your beam does solid damage, but the cooldown is not that great. Overall, you're basically average, I guess. Like, you have strong melee power, but a mediocre, not strong beam, but cooldowns could be better. You know what I mean? It's, you're just there, I guess. You're average. I don't know. I don't really have much to say for him, so we'll move on. Violente, Violente, you have kind of mediocre melee power. You have good beam spam strength, though, and you have good hitboxes. But, you also have insane regen, but, again, your mediocre melee is one thing, but another thing is you're huge. You're huge, you're easy to hit, which can instantly makes your insane regen ability kind of pointless, because let me tell you something. All it takes is 1 damage to deny your regen. 1 damage. 1. Not 5, not 10, 1. So all it takes, because you're so big and so easy to hit, all it takes is 1 person to even breathe in your direction, and that insane regen advantage, gone. So that's my take on that. Sela, I think I'm pronouncing it right this time. She got not a big melee nerf, but a small one. I did the math, and overall, her cooldowns were slightly increased. She still has her insane range, good speed, decent health, insane swim speed. But overall, the nerfs lowered her melee DPS by 12%, which isn't much, but it's enough to move her down a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit. Next is Final Wars. Now, originally, they gave his tail whip cooldown a slight buff, but then nerfed his beam cooldowns. But then they reverted the tail whip buff, so now, as far as I'm aware, he just has slightly worse beam cooldowns than before. So now he's a little bit lower than before. Overall, I still think he's a jack of all trades when it comes to the Godzillas. He's good at everything. He's basically like Showa, but minus the flight. He can do everything a normal, average Godzilla can effectively, but he's not the best at what every Godzilla can do. Next is Mogira. This is shocking. Well, if you don't know about the nerfs, it's shocking, but basically, I'm going to give you something. Alright? Now, Mogira's Plasma Laser Cannon cooldown before the 2021 update was 12 seconds, and his Bullet Blast cooldown was 9. Now, the Plasma Laser Cannon cooldown is 25 seconds. That's basically doubled, which means that the DPS you get from Plasma Laser Cannon is cut in half. And then, basically, for a Bullet Blast, it went from 9 seconds to 12, which, if I'm doing my math correctly, yeah, that lowers Bullet Blast DPS by 25%. So overall, you can still bully ground kaijus with fair ease. It's not hard. And you can still do beam spam with Bullet Blast, but overall, your DPS significantly went down. But in my opinion, Moghira's fine now. Annoying still, but overall more balanced than before and is actually in a good spot. Do not touch Mogira. Do not touch it. Same can go for a lot of these kaijus, except for maybe a few certain ones, or you know, other few certain ones. In my opinion, are fine as they are. So please, oh, Kumanga, please nerf Kumanga web spam while I'm on this topic, and please give Kamivis back his, like, water damage buff. Please. He deserves to be an A tier. That's all I have to say. Sorry going off topic, but apart from that, mostly pretty solid. Next are the 2 Rodans. Now first, I'm going to put in Titanic Rodan. He is extremely fast. Like, tied for third fastest flyer in the game, only beaten by Heisei Mothra and Megaguirus, and Megaguirus is Megaguirus. Yeah, but you have insane, like, melee DPS. Your hitboxes are mediocre, in my opinion, but you can still range ground kaiju. You have decent health, like 3,750. Your overall, you can do really good damage. You have really good speed. You can just run people over, basically. You're like a bulldozer, a flying bulldozer. Next is Heisei Rodan. Now, slightly less health and a bit less damage, but you're smaller, you're harder to hit, and to top this off, you have better melee hitboxes, which overall does put it slightly above Titanic Rodan. That's my take on it. Next is Millennium Godzilla, high A tier. Now, hear me out. Yes, Pulse and Atomic Breath take a very long time to charge up. You're correct. However, they pump out so much damage. Now, my take on this is, don't use them in the middle of a fight. Use his beam and Atomic Breath to start a fight. Because although they take a while to charge up, if you use them at the beginning of a fight, you can get a really good advantage. Top this off, although you don't have the most health out of all Godzillas, 3,900, you have insane regeneration. 99, 100, and 101 regen per tick at base when you have 3,900 base health. And it goes up by 2 points of health for every regen point you put into it. So you can stack up that regen. Literally, as long as you get any opportunity to not get hit, you can regen so much of your health back. And because you're smaller, unlike certain kaiju, you can actually, you know, manage to maintain your regen at least slightly better. And top this off, although your attacks, you know, take a while to charge up, they're good at making space. Because in my opinion, kaiju that rely on their bulk and regen need to be able to make space with, although Millennium Godzilla was balanced so well in this regard. Because although he has mediocre health, he has insane regen, but his attacks, although they take ages to charge up, because they do so much damage, it makes people go, oh crap, I need to back away, and when they back away, that's when you start healing. You're literally like a tank. You make space and you start to heal health. You also have very strong melee damage to top all this off. So overall, he's a really good kaiju. This one, Fallen from Grace, Mecha Ghidorah. Basically, they took his force field cooldown, which was used to be 7 seconds, now it's 20. I know it says 26 seconds in-game, but apparently I got confirmation from someone from the balance team themselves that it's supposed to be 20 seconds. So bear that in mind, it's 20 seconds. He's still really good though. Good melee DPS, and apparently his beam got a minuscule buff, which is not even worth mentioning, but hey, it's a tiny buff, I guess. But point being, good melee DPS, good speed. He's just extremely limited build-wise because his melees take up so much charge. I mean, his force field is still good, you can't spam it now, which makes him no longer a Mecca Godzilla counter, but now I don't think the need for a Mecca Godzilla counter isn't as dire as it used to be. So, overall, he's good, just not, you know, high S tier like he used to be. Next is Frostbite Godzilla. Nothing really changed with him, but he is a tank. He has 6,000 base health. He also has the instant swim thing, instantaneous turn on dime swim as 2019. He has basically the same melee DPS as 2019, but a stronger beam. He also, because he has higher health, he heals more. But the most important factor is his Claw Swipe has old 2014's Claw hitbox, which basically means it covers his entire body. Frostbite's Claw Swipe covers his entire body, including the end of his tail, which means you can range with that as if it were a tail whip. Or, because it covers your entire body, including the top of your head here, you could do that instead. So yeah, Frostbite, really good tank of a kaiju, very solid. But now, we're getting into the big boys. First up, Burning Godzilla. He got basically an identical nerf to Heisei, with his melee cooldown going from 2 seconds to 2.8 seconds. Overall, lowered his melee DPS by 29%. He's still worth S+, but he's no longer top of S+. Or not S+, I'm sorry. Bottom of S tier, no longer top of S tier. You still have your absolutely absurd beam that does 2,700 damage. You have Meltdown, you have more health than Heisei. You also have good range because of your melee, just like Heisei. You're still Heisei, but significantly better. You're still good kaiju. You're just not better than Thermo overall. Next is Mecca Godzilla, who got nerfed hard, but at the same time, he's way less annoying now. Now, I would like to point out that before this tier list, but after the second one, I actually moved him to high S tier, and I planned to have him there. He was supposed to be high S+ tier for this video, but he got nerfed hard, so now he's here, which is a good thing. So let's start off with the nerfs. First thing they did was there's now, when you activate the Neo defense barrier, there's like a 2-second delay, which means it's not instant, which is good, which means you actually have to be smart when you're using that move. Sorry, Mecha players. And they increased Neo defense barrier cooldown to 45 seconds. Now this is the second most big thing, which basically means you can't spam it either. It's not instant anymore, and you can't spam it. However, the final thing is, they nerfed his swim speed. Thank the mother of God. His swim speed used to be 90, which was more than his flight speed. But now, it's 50, like a normal flyer's flight speed. This was possibly the best nerf we've ever had in ages. Thank you. Also, however, he's still S tier because he's small. He still does have Neo Defense Barrier, like, you know, you can still use it defensively, you just can't be brain dead while using it. So that's still a good tool to use. You also have Beam Spam. Excuse me. You still have Beam Spam, which does insanely high damage, and Finger Missiles have insane range. Although they aren't like a standard melee, they have good range as long as you can, you know, aim them in a way. He's still a strong kaiju. He's just not. He just doesn't want to make me smash my keyboard, which is good. Okay, next is Volcanic Violente, and I know people are not going to like it that he's this low in S tier, but here's why. He's Violente, or she is better than Violente. He's literally a better version of Violente. Slightly, like extra 400 health, monstrous melee DPS, and significantly stronger beam spam, and slightly better regen. However, one of your melee hitboxes is iffy. It's like Searing Spear's hitbox is iffy. If someone goes in the center of you, Searing Spears has a very hard time hitting them, which is a significant downside. This doesn't apply to large kaiju, because for large kaiju, most of the time there are cases where even large kaiju will, because you're that big, if they go inside you, they have a hard time hitting you. But you still have insane melee DPS, but you also suffer from this for the same reason as normal Violente, and that is, although you have insane regen, it takes 1 damage to deny that regen. Because you're so damn big and you're so damn slow. That you're so big and you're so slow that, yeah. Thermo didn't get stronger since the last video. It's just a matter of kaiju got weaker than him, and not many got stronger than him. So technically, compared to the last video, his overall power didn't change. It's just that his positioning on the list got better, because these guys got worse than him. But they aren't bad enough to go into A tier, if that makes sense. He is a god in melee combat. Pulse, 2300 damage. Both your melees do more than do 700 damage each. You also can turn on a dime when swimming, just like 2019 and Frostbite, which just means that it makes you lethal in water combat. And because, here's the thing, your bite hitbox is just like Frostbite's claw hitbox. And let me tell you something. Your bite attack does 730 damage, but you have that insane range where it covers your entire body. So you can range people with 730 damage. Most of you Thermal players don't even know the potential you have outside of your pulse. You can be a menace. And to top this off, your pulse can not only be just used offensively. If you have enough regen points, seriously, stop doing max health. It's not the best build. If you have enough regen points, you can, hear this, you can use pulse to block beams. You can do it to block beams. So yeah, bear that in mind. Your only major downside is A tier and S tier up flyers, basically. And maybe a few, and Kumanga, but Kumanga is Kumanga. He beats every ground kaiju, so don't feel bad if the spider beats you, because everyone's suffering from that. Gigan, who actually got, although I wouldn't say the best buff, he got a small buff. Basically, his swim speed went from 50 to 65, which, okay. It doesn't change his spot, but I guess it just further solidifies his position here. I don't know. He has really strong beam. I wouldn't say he can spam it, but it does have a fairly short cooldown. It's high burst damage at that. He also has really good melee hitboxes when flying. He has really good melee DPS. Although not the fastest, he's still fairly quick. He's extremely small. He's just really good. His downsides, I would say, would be perhaps, well, beam spam if your opponent knows how to aim and you don't have cover. Or kaijus with really large melee hitboxes that can hit you with ease. Like the next one, which most people aren't good at Monster Zero, but which is why most people don't realize how freaking goated Monster Zero is. He is a goat. Alright, let's think here. You have pretty strong melee DPS. You have, you have the second highest health pool in the entire game. You also have insane melee, not only good melee DPS, but you have insane melee hitboxes, especially Bite. You can range just about almost every ground kaiju at Bite if you know what you're doing, and there is not a damn thing they can do about it. Just think about that for a second. You could range nearly every ground kaiju, and there's not a damn thing in their life they can do about it. And even if they do hit you, odds are if you're, ranging them and you're managing to hit them most of the time without them hitting you, their hits aren't going to matter because you have so much health. That's his downsides, however. From what I noticed is, he has below average health regen for the amount of health he has. I'm pretty sure his base level regen for health is around the low 50s. And to give an idea, kaiju that are in like the 4,000 health range heal roughly 50 health per tick at base. But you have nearly 50% more health than that, so it's kind of weird. You heal below average health for something of your health pool, so it can take longer to heal. And although you have good hitboxes, your hitbox is equally as huge. So it's not hard to hit you, and if someone's good at dodging and has good melee hitboxes, they can kind of mess you up. So just keep that in mind. King Ghidorah. Let's see here. Has good range, just like Monster Zero, can range people, but has even more DPS. I forgot to mention, Monster Zero, another thing about Monster Zero is your beam is absolute crap. Don't use your beam unless you know for a fact someone is going to die from it. I'm talking, someone has only a couple hundred health left. Because if you use it on someone who has even 1,000 health left and they can escape, it's not going to kill them. So don't do it. Just don't. It's very situational when to use your beam. Anyway, moving on. King Ghidorah, like I said, good range just like Monster Zero. Even better melee DPS. An even better beam, has, for some reason, 70 swim speed. Also doesn't suck complete ass when fighting in the water like Monster Zero. The only downside? You're also quicker than Monster Zero when flying. You can also, most importantly, you can combine your melee with your beam as King Ghidorah. So overall, although you have less health and a little bit less range than Monster Zero, overall, you are superior. Which is weird. I mean, he did get a very, very tiny, just like how Mecca Kingdor got a minuscule beam buff, King Ghidorah got a minuscule beam nerf, which barely did anything. It doesn't change his viability. It would have to be a much more significant beam nerf than what he got to actually... Overall, you are the best out of the Ghidorahs. Technically speaking, overall, you are the best. We're now getting to the top 3 people. These are the biggest of the baddest boys. Now, for me, people say Shin sucks. Oh, sorry. But here's the thing. Shin sucks because you're probably trying to go into a melee fight with it. And let me tell you something. You don't melee fight with Shin. Shin is all about positioning. You want to position yourself near perfectly, if not perfectly. Because let me tell you something. You can chain combo your beams. You can do your main beam, tail beam, main beam again, tail beam, and maybe even a third main beam, and your beam DPS overall is just nuts. So you're gonna shred through people with your beams if you know what you're doing. Back beams also has Now, I will say, in my last video, Shin Godzilla struggled to hit people with small kaiju with his back beams. That's not the case anymore, because there was a bug with the hitbox. They fixed that bug, kinda, not really. They basically toned it down significantly. But the point is, you can technically hit small kaiju still with your back beams now. But that doesn't change the fact that your melee DPS overall is pretty bad. So basically, your main weakness as Shin is the fact that you can get melee rushed by something that has enough health and enough melee power to take you down before you take them down. So all you have my tips for Shin, you want to be able to make space, because if you have a distance advantage, you can force people to take cover, and if they're not taking cover, they're not attacking you, because you also have insane regen and really good health as Shin. So, yeah. It's all about positioning yourself. For example, I would suggest going near the shores of very steep water areas. Beam spam someone from a bar. Chain combo your beams. When they're getting close to you, back up to the edge of the shoreline and use your back beams. That way, even if they're a large kaiju, your back beams will hit them and do a lot of damage. Then you can tail whip them, and odds are they're going to be nearly dead. They're probably going to be by half health by the time they get to you. Add that back beams and tail whip by you backing up and taking the lower ground, you're probably going to nearly kill them. Your downsides, I would say, apart from maybe being melee rushed, is beam spam from a flying kaiju, which basically is only 2 other kaiju. So, yeah, keep that in mind. Next, the newest addition as of this video's recording, Godzilla 2021. Holy crap, this thing. So, where do I begin with this thing? Let's see. Basically, same health as Shin, just slightly more. But you'll have 33 sprint speed as a tanky kaiju. 33 sprint speed as a tanky kaiju. Not much will outrun you. Things that do outrun you have way less health. You have 120 charge, which, by the way, because you have 120 charge, and you can afford to spend more health points onto this thing. For example, I have 3 regen, 7 health on this thing. It has 6,014 health, yet I do not run out of charge as that thing. Because not only does it have 120 charge, its melees are dirt cheap. Mauling, 12 charge. Dual Bash, 15 charge. And Intimidation Rumbling, I believe, is also 12 charge. So, the only thing that are expensive is Hollow Quarry, which is 100 charge, which the chances you'll get to use that in combat is very low, so don't worry about that. And your Atomic Breath, which costs 80 charge. Which, by the way, your Atomic Breath is stupid powerful. It does a little bit over 2,300 damage in a matter of seconds. Seconds, because you do roughly, just barely below 170 damage per tick. The only kaiju that do more damage per individual tick for their beam is Mogira, as far as I'm concerned. And Mogira relies on burst damage. Your beam can shred stuff. It's to the point where if you beam something, you should have an immediate advantage against it. And combine this with the fact you have 33 sprint speed, and you have really good melee DPS, what you can do is at a medium distance, that is where your medium to close distance is where you're most effective. What you can do is at medium distance, beam someone, basically take out half of their health, if not then almost half of their health with one move, and then while they're still beaming, you melee rush them. Let me tell you something, I'm going to tell you the combo for 2021. Maul, Dual Bash, Maul, and Intimidation Rumbling. That being said, Intimidation Rumbling and Dual Bash have insane hitboxes. Well, yeah. Intimidation Rumbling, you can use that to range people too, and maybe bait out moves. So, all of this combined, it makes them really good. But what he struggles from is flying kaiju with insane range and beam spam. Like, I would say, in terms of counters, you have 5 counters in the entire game, only 5 kaiju that you should worry about. Alright? Mogira and Mecca Godzilla. Those are 2 they have to worry about, because they beam spam you, and although your beam does insane damage, it does have a somewhat long cooldown. So just bear that in mind. Oh, by the way, you also have insane health regen as this thing. Your health regen is nuts. Sorry, got off topic there, but... So yeah, Mogira, Mecca Godzilla, they can beam spam and they can technically deny your regen. But, depending on the situation, you do have a chance against these things. It's just not a good chance. More so Mogira. Mecca Godzilla, I'm pretty sure you have little to no chance. Masa Zero, again, I feel like I need to remind people that this tier list is based off of everyone is max level and everyone is good at the game. But a Masa Zero that's max level and knows what it's doing, it will clap your 2021. I am sorry, but its bite hitbox is stupid. It doesn't even have to worry about your beam. Because if you go for the beam, you'll do a lot of damage, but it'll melee rush you, and it'll do a lot of damage to you in return. And it can just range you with bite, which just makes the fight so difficult. So, Masa Zero, if it knows what it's doing, it'll probably kill you. And finally, there's something that every ground kaiju fears, which is Kumanga. But Kumanga's really rare. So, like a high-level Kumanga, from what I've seen, is really rare, so don't worry about that one. And the other kaiju you have to worry about is the king of the KU, Destroyer. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I did not put him back in the S+ tier just because of the variable slicer buff. I decided to do a test. Before 2021, I decided to have Destroyer fight every S tier kaiju that was also in the list. And depending on how well he did, I would have put him back in S+. And he actually did not amazing, but he actually did okay. And so I put him back in S+ tier. That being said, I did a second test after his variable slicer. Like, to give you an idea, if I were to say how Destroyer was before the variable slicer buff, I would say it would range between low to mid S+ tier, if that were a thing. He's the only one in S+ tier, but to give you an idea. Now, if you add the variable slicer buff, I'd say he's what you call a high S+ tier. So yeah, Destroyer is, honestly, leave Destroyer alone now. I think he's fine. Destroyer's fine now. Just leave him alone. He doesn't need any more changing. Leave him be. He's good. He's perfectly fine. And that sums up the video. So for those who stayed for this entire thing, thank you. It really does mean a lot to me. After the huge rebalance update that they did with 2021, I kind of felt the need that I absolutely had to do another tier list. I had to do it. And honestly, I'm glad I did, because I had fun. I always have fun doing these. It's just for me, I feel like I can't always do them because it requires a lot of game balance or a lot of new kaijus to be added. I didn't wait as long as I did between the last one because there was a huge rebalance. So, but overall, I'm glad I did this. And if you watched the entire thing, thank you. Goodbye.